Throughout the trial, jurors heard that Veltman sought to target Muslims, leaving a manifesto before the attack detailing exactly that. But for more, on the impact the case has had here in Canada, the federal government's special representative on combating Islamophobia, Amira Elghawaby, is with us. Hi, Ms. Elghawaby. Good to see you back here. Thank you very much for making the time.
Thank you so much, Vassy.
The jury took only about 6 hours to deliberate and arrive at this verdict. What does that say to you?
Well, I think this decisive verdict really speaks to the horror of what the jury was listening to over the past few months in this trial. They clearly were responding to the fact that the accused himself admitted to deliberately killing this family, deliberately doing so because of their Muslim identity. So it's a real important moment to recognize that the jury didn't waste time in delivering a very decisive verdict in this case, and it provides some level of relief.
I was going to ask you, just in that vein, and I was listening to everyone as they exited the courtroom talk about there be some measure of relief from the fact that the justice system did arrive at the conclusion it did. Do you share in a bit of that relief, as much as can be possible, I guess?
Absolutely. I think the moment that many of us, heard the verdict, I was actually in a meeting with a member of the London Muslim community in that moment, and we both were sort of, oh, it's about to be released, and just waited. And at the moment that we heard that it was guilty on all counts, it was both tears and that huge sense of relief, because first and foremost we're thinking about the family of the Afzal family, how they have had to endure this trial, how they have had to listen to all these details, and to imagine that there wouldn't be a conclusive decision was very, very worrisome for all of us. And then to see that justice indeed to that extent had been served. The justice system responded in this case and demonstrated that no one should get away with murder, and no one should ever be able to just deliberately take away 4 members of this one family all in one fell swoop.
The details of the trial that you reference, I think for any of us paying attention, are unimaginable to listen to, but particularly the degree to which there was planning involved in this, the reason that he targeted this family, the fact that, just by their appearance, he was able to identify them as Muslims. Again, like for anyone watching it and listening to it, it's been hard. I know you, though, have been in contact all these years with that community, with the friends and family of the victims. What was that process like for them?
I mean, as anyone can imagine, the losing your family members in such a horrific way. I just want to take your viewers back, Vassy, if I may, to that night. So it was this beautiful Sunday evening. It was June 2021. We were still in the pandemic. As many of us will remember, some of the ways that we could sort of spend time with each other was going on walks. And so this family was going on a walk, and some of the video footage that emerged in the trial, you could actually see the little boy skipping along with his parents, with his older sister and his grandmother, just like many of us did during that time. It was a time that brought many families even closer together. And all of a sudden, within a day, we heard, oh, this family had been hit by a truck, and no one actually knew what exactly had happened. And very quickly, it was made known to the public through the police that this was actually a hate-motivated attack. And the ripples of fear that went throughout our communities, where that the shock not only for the community, for the family of having lost 4 members of a family, grandmother, parents, and a sister, and the young boy who was injured but has survived. That shock, and then added and compounded by the reality that this was a message crime. This was a crime deliberately aimed at seeking to cause fear and hatred amongst the population towards Muslims, to sort of create that idea that Muslims are not welcome in Canada, that this individual with his sick, twisted logic, fueled by and informed by other types of narratives that he'd found online. He talked about in the trial having been inspired, if that's even a word, to describe the way he looked at what happened in New Zealand in Christchurch with the 2019 massacre there of 51 worshippers at a mosque. That those are the kinds of ideas. He was fueled by white nationalist ideology. He was worried about immigrants and felt that he had to do something about it. And to realize that he'd deliberately done that was just such a shock and remained not just for Muslims across Canada, but fellow Canadians as well.
The jury, it's sort of an interesting way in which they were to arrive, according to the judge, at their verdict, in that they could use, you know, that deliberate nature of the crime, if they so in fact believe that, to arrive at a guilty verdict, but also they could be informed by other charges which relate to terrorism charges, to put it bluntly. We don't know yet what led to their decision. The judge may reflect on that in the sentencing. Is there any doubt in your mind that this was an act of terrorism?
I think it's clear that it was an act of terrorism. He was clearly motivated by ideologically inspired views with regards to Muslims. And so his intent to send a message to our communities definitely underscores that way of viewing it, not just a random family being targeted, but a message that was being sent in order to cause fear. So in my mind, in the minds of many fellow Canadians, no doubt this was terrorism. And we've seen, sadly, in Canada that this was not the first mass killing of Muslims. We saw a mass killing of Muslims in Quebec City in 2017. We saw the murder of a Muslim volunteer in Toronto, also during the pandemic. So sadly, Canada has had the distinction of having the highest number of deadly Islamophobic attacks of any other G7 country. So we also need to take a moment to realize that, you know, these types of deadly attacks, you know, represent the very worst manifestation of Islamophobia, and it's in fact why there was a push for an Islamophobia summit and a push to create this role within the federal government to say we need as a society to understand what are the ways in which Islamophobia can manifest. Of course, the very worst is a type of situation like this where we lose 4 beautiful members of the London family and of Canadians, but also sort of the everyday incidents that happen, hateful, discrimination, bias. We need as a society, fellow Canadians, to come together to say, this is not okay. We have to figure out ways to ensure that a very strong message is sent to anyone who harbors such divisive and dangerous views. And I think that message was sent today in this verdict.
Okay, I'll leave it there. I appreciate you spending some of your time to reflect on that verdict and the significance of it with us today. Thanks, Ms. Elghawaby.
Thank you, Vassy.